Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to today's webcast, Bigger, Better, Faster Subscription Commerce Growth, brought to you by VentureBeat and Recurly. I'm Wendy Schuckert. I'm going to be your moderator today. Now we have just a few announcements before we begin. First, this webcast contains audience polling. Complete the polls when they appear. There's going to be 2 of them, and hit submit. We thank you in advance for your participation. The slides are going to advance automatically throughout the event. You should have already seen a slide move already now. If it hasn't moved for you, or if you just want to see it a little bit bigger, there's a lot of really good data tables coming up. You're going to want to go into the attachments button. It's below the video window there, and click download today's presentation deck, and you'll be able to download all the slides and then view them as large as you like. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our help guide. You can click the help link inside the Rate This box. Now, we also want the live audience to participate in the Q&A session. You can ask questions at any time during the webcast. Just type your question into the Ask a Question text area. It's right below the video window, and then click the Ask a Question button. We also recommend that you disable your pop-up blockers for a smooth experience. Now on to the presentation. Discussing today's topic, we have with us Emma Clark. She's a Senior Product Manager at Recurly. We also have with us our own Stuart Rogers. He's the Director of Marketing Technology here at VentureBeat. Now I'm going to hand it over to Emma to talk us through the agenda, and then we're going to launch a poll question right away. So Emma, take it away.
Hey guys, thanks so much for joining today. So we're going to talk through quite a few things I'm excited about. So first, we're going to walk through the growth of subscriptions. We're then going to talk through the analytics and specific KPI and metrics throughout the subscriber life cycle, the economics of subscription acquisition, key subscription acquisition metrics and strategies, talk a little bit about the frictionless experience, and then provide you guys with some industry benchmark data that our Recurly research team has come up with. And finally, we'll go into a case study where we talk about one of our customers, Unbounce, who some of you may be familiar with.
And Emma, at this point, I'd love to launch one of our poll questions we have for the audience who are live. The question is, does your company use a subscription model? And the options are no, we're looking into them, obviously, because you're here. Yes, we have subscriptions, and we use a third-party subscription billing platform. Yes, we have subscriptions, and we built our own subscription billing platform. If you're not sure, there's an option there for you. And if those options don't quite fit all of your scenarios at your organization, hit something else, and then let us know what that something else is in the Q&A box. We're going to leave this poll open for a few minutes, so give our audience lots of time to start voting, but I see that we're already starting to vote. So Emma, we're going to keep that open while you go through the slides, and we'll check back in a bit.
Sounds good. Thanks, Wendy. So while you guys are voting, I'm going to go ahead and get started and kind of dive into our agenda here. So feel free to continue voting as you're paying attention to the slides. So the first thing that I want to talk about a little bit, and it looks like some of you, there's a variety of answers around whether or not your company uses a subscription model, and whether or not you're thinking about it or you do. It's great you came here today because you understand the growth of subscriptions. It's real. The subscription model is either something that you're considering or is something you're using. And so just a quick stat for those that are not as familiar, 35% of Fortune 2000 companies generate revenue via subscriptions. So they do permeate our everyday life. They make up a substantial part of business and consumer purchasing. And as you can see on the left, we have a variety of the industries that we serve that we know use subscriptions, and it doesn't just apply to SaaS. So a lot of people think about it traditionally as SaaS, but you've got consumer goods, box of the month clubs, streaming media, and the Internet of Things. All of those are starting to adopt this model and even more. So you'll hear me reference back to this a few times today, but let's start with the hallmarks of a strong subscription model. So the first one is predictable revenue. The second is customer loyalty. And the third, and close to my heart as being closely involved in subscription analytics, is the ability to harness the wealth of data for valuable subscriber insights. So let me dig into that last one a little bit. When we say a wealth of data, we're talking about 3 different events in particular. We're talking about customer events produced from billing events and marketing events. So looking at these events in isolation really only tells you part of the story, but the intersection of all 3, where you see the insight section there of the graphic, is really where you're able to make more informed decisions. So to make this a little less abstract and relatable, I'll take an example. So let's say you offer a coupon discount on one of your product plans, one of your subscription plans, and you're trying to encourage customers, new customer signups. The marketing data would point to a measure of success based upon the number of new signups. But that's only part of the picture. Once you pull in billing data points, you're then able to look at things like the lifetime value of those subscribers that you signed up from the coupon, or the total revenue generated from that campaign. But finally, once you add in customer events, then you're able to see things like, when did those new signups that started with the coupon churn? Did they stay with me for a long time, or did they churn after 30 days? And that should help you evaluate how successful that campaign was. So all of this data combined provides a much better picture to enable you to optimize your business and accelerate growth. So the first two that I talked about before, again, were recurring revenue and customer loyalty as the hallmarks of a strong subscription model. To maximize these attributes, you have to test, analyze, target, and repeat. And we'll go into what that means in a little more detail. But the key point here is it's not at just purchase point, it's through the entire life cycle. And this is something that's unique to subscriptions. So you're gaining your value, so that customer loyalty and the revenue that you gain from those customers, from acquisition through continued engagement and through retention. So that whole life cycle is extremely important and something that we'll go back to again and again in this deck and whenever we speak with our customers about the value of subscriptions. So just a visual to demonstrate the importance of this subscriber life cycle and the economics of the subscription model. So really how these two interact together and why the life cycle is so important. So unlike traditional transaction billing models, subscription businesses usually have a higher, large upfront investment to acquire customers. So that's the section you're seeing around customer acquisition costs. And then you see that little section around free trial. That, while free trials are a very useful tool, and we'll talk about them, that can also add an upfront cost during acquisition because you're essentially providing your goods for free. So to maintain a profitable subscription model, you have to closely monitor engagement and loyalty metrics to make sure you're hitting your yield and revenue targets. So are you getting your payback essentially, and are you accelerating from there to grow more as your lifetime value increases? So the way that you kind of now go into a few ways to measure sustainable acquisition strategies, and also, as we talked about, to monitor yield and revenue targets. So there are quite a few different metrics that you can take a look at, but we chose a few that are really relevant for key subscription acquisition, and then also to measure those yield and revenue targets we just talked about in the subscription economics model. So monthly recurring revenue, this may be one that those of you that use subscriptions today may be extremely familiar with, but I want to just kind of break that down a little bit. This one's not necessarily specific to acquisition, but it is one of the most crucial metrics that all subscription businesses look at. As we discussed previously, the subscription model is predicated on predictable revenue. So MRR is essentially a measure of that. The revenue a subscription business can predictably expect on a monthly basis. For those finance folks on the phone, you know this is not the same as GAAP revenue, and it doesn't focus on revenue that's already recognized. It's forward-looking, and that's what's really valuable for the place of MRR and subscription economics, is that it looks at revenue momentum versus looking into the past. And in the simplest manner, your recurring revenue is the sum of all recurring charges, those charges associated with subscriptions. And we sum that up and we normalize it to monthly values. So what that means is at any point in time, you should be able to measure your MRR by looking at the charges associated with your currently active subscriptions. The second important KPI to take a look at is trial conversion rate. So as I mentioned briefly before, trials can be a really valuable acquisition tool. We'll discuss that in even more detail and the ways you can utilize trials when we talk about acquisition strategies. But if you do decide to offer a trial, you need to track your trial conversion rate. So that's essentially the total number of subscriptions in trial for a certain period of time that end up converting to paid subscribers. So this will help you understand how effective your trial is in bringing in more paid subscribers. But that's kind of only a piece of it. We also like to track what happens to those trials after the fact or the reason why they didn't convert. So it's also important to look at why didn't that percentage of customers that didn't convert to paid, why they didn't move on and continue their service or product with you. Did they cancel during their trial because they weren't interested, or did they end their trial and you attempted to collect a payment but the payment failed? And so this indicates to you how you can increase your trial conversion rate by understanding the reason people didn't convert. And then we also like to take a look at the retention and LTV of those subscribers that started with trial versus those that didn't. So this really helps you evaluate the effectiveness of your trial at acquiring valuable subscribers. So that's great that your trial conversion rate may be 85%, but how valuable are those subscribers after they convert to paid? How long do they stay with you? How much money, how much revenue do they generate for you? And that's also really important to take a look at. Subscriber reactivations is the third one. So we also call this returning subscribers. And a returning subscriber or a subscriber reactivation is essentially a customer that churned from your product or service and then came back at a later time and signed back up with you. This is mostly, we see this a lot more for seasonal businesses such as education or sports. We also see this in businesses that get really big spikes in signups around live events. That's something like OTT, streaming media. So it's extremely important to track reactivations or returning subscribers and the revenue you receive from them. By tracking this group, you're able to then develop a separate strategy and target them with the right promotions. They also may be a really valuable resource for you to understand why your subscribers are churning. So if you think about it, those subscribers that churn and never come back, you really don't have an outlet to reach out to them and to understand the reasons that they churned qualitatively. But with reactivated subscribers, you're able to gain valuable information from them and understand why is it that you churned from my service? And then, furthermore, why are you back? Why did you return and sign up with me again? So for these, you really want to be proactive right when the customer returns, so encourage engagement and adoption. And then you also want to make your engagement communications hyper-targeted and personalized so they have a much better subscriber experience. The next one is customer acquisition costs. So we reference this a little bit in the subscription economics model, but traditionally, new revenue or acquiring new subscribers is most of the time more expensive than existing revenue or revenue that you get from existing customers paying you more. So because of that, you want to monitor your average customer acquisition cost, and you also want to take a look at your customer acquisition cost by each campaign, each funnel, each plan, and take a look at certain methods that you use to acquire customers. How much is that costing you? And then once you have that data, you're going to want to take a look at it and say, am I getting the payback on the investment that we put towards our marketing department or sales department to acquire new customers? And then also, more importantly, understand how long that takes, your payback period. And that's also one of the metrics that we mentioned below that's important to take a look at. So customer acquisition costs should include all marketing and sales costs associated with acquiring that new customer. Subscriber LTV is the other half of the equation here. So that's right above the customer acquisition costs. And I talked about CAC before LTV because it's kind of the first part of the equation. And the second part is subscriber LTV. So it's essentially the value or benefits a subscriber will bring you over the entire lifetime of your relationship with them. And we pull that into present value terms. So there's a lot of different ways you can calculate LTV, and we can get really academic about it. But there's three basic inputs that you're going to want to include. The estimated lifetime of your customer relationship, and we use the average churn rate as a conduit of that, the average revenue per subscriber, and then discount rate. So your discount rate is really accounting for the fact that future profits are worth not as much as today's profits, because you need to account for risk and the time value of money. So it does lower your LTV, but it makes it a little more accurate and realistic. And then lastly, it's important to note that LTV is really a really useful tool, but because it's a forward-looking metric, it's a future metric, things can change. It's not an exact value and it's not set in stone. It's always going to change as those three inputs change. And then we have your subscriber return on investment and payback. Your ROI is really your CAC to LTV ratio. So are you getting the money you spent on acquiring customers back? So are these customers valuable enough that you get that return? And then how many times greater is your return is really your ROI. And then your payback period is how long does it take you to get this return on investment? The benefits of a short payback period are not only smaller working capital, but it also provides you the ability to grow at a faster pace. The more capital that's tied up in customer acquisition, you really lose out on opportunities to invest that money back into your business. So it's good to pay attention to that. And then the last one on the slide is churn. So churn, of course, is not directly normally thought of as an acquisition metric, but it's really, we included it on here because it's crucial for all subscription businesses to monitor. So even if your acquisition efforts are producing lots of high-value customers, that's great. You're evaluating them and saying, yes, I'm bringing a lot of new signups and they have a high LTV at the get-go. High churn can really easily eat into those overall revenues. So many folks get really stuck on monitoring subscriber churn rates, but you don't want to forget about revenue churn, which is often a better indicator of what's going on with churn and how it's impacting your business. So this really tells you the quality of subscribers that are churning. So if your loyal or high-paying subscribers are churning, that's not a good indication. So also remember to take into consideration how many of those churn subscribers reactivated like we talked about. So you actually may want to have two separate subscriber churn rates, one that takes into account returning subscribers and one that takes out those returning subscribers and only looks at those customers that churned and never came back to you. So those are our key subscription acquisition metrics. Now that we've discussed, so just kind of quick review, we've discussed the economics of the subscription model, what is needed to make those economics work for you, and then how to measure that success. So the next thing I want to go into is kind of the meat of this is what key tools you can use to utilize to attract those profitable subscribers. So the first one here we have is plans. So at the most basic level, a subscription plan dictates how often and how much you charge a customer for their subscription. So it's really important to give your customers several different options for purchasing your product. So this can be through different plans, through bundles, through add-ons. And in addition to that, you're also going to want to think about not only how much I charge for my plan and how long it is, but when do you want to bill your customers? So are you going to bill them on a monthly, on a yearly schedule, provide both options, or maybe you're even going to bill based upon consumption? So regardless of what you choose, you need a platform, you need a way to provide this flexibility to your customers so you can build out many plans, many billing cycles, and then most importantly, you need to make it easy for your customers to upgrade and downgrade, especially mid-billing cycle, because that's pretty common. And that you need to be able to handle the payment proration, the billing changes, the communications to customers. Being able to handle all of those things really reduces the friction and allows your customers to upgrade easily without there being a lot of pain points during that process. You want to make that an easy transition. The next piece or the next tool is pricing. So in order to maximize subscribers and nail incentive pricing, your price points can't stay stagnant. And we will talk about this a little bit in the Unbounce use case at the end because I think it's a really great example. But you'll likely end up changing your pricing several times in order to find that optimal price point for each package. And one thing we see a lot with our customers and is a great idea is you may want to consider offering a price point that's much lower, that lowers the barrier of entry, so you can encourage your customers to engage with your product or service and then create a path to upgrade. And so then you're going to want one or a few different high-priced premium packages and a path for that customer to grow with you so that you can encourage them to upgrade to these. So providing more personalized experience with these, providing different add-ons, maybe a reduced rate for signing up for a yearly plan versus a monthly plan. So the next one here is promotions and trials. And I'm actually going to kind of skip over this one now because we're going to talk about it in a future slide and in a whole slide all of its own and talk a little bit about channels. So on channels, we really mean, where do you spend your advertising or marketing dollars? It could be through which partner you're reselling your product or service, which distribution channel or marketplace you're selling your service on. So there's a lot of different ways to think about it, but it's essentially the where. And the key takeaway here is that we often see subscription businesses measuring those KPIs that we talked about on an aggregated level, but where this really becomes valuable as it relates to channels is tracking these KPIs based upon the channel that you sold your product from. So you want to keep a tab on where you're getting your most profitable subscribers on so you can evaluate whether or not that distribution channel is actually effective for you, and that will keep your customer acquisition cost in check. So just to give you guys another quick example of how all of this works together, because I think that seems kind of abstract when we talk about plans, pricing, promotions, channels. That's all great, but I think it really comes together when you can use an example. To give you that example, have come up with my own fake company, Emma's Company. And Emma's Company sells a video streaming service so people can watch their favorite cooking shows anytime they want. So I love cooking, that's why I came up with that. So Emma's Company, I offer 3 different plans. I chose to first offer the bronze plan, and that offers streaming of 5 designated TV series for $5.99 a month. We consider this a flat rate monthly plan billed on a monthly basis. Now, if I wanted to offer an add-on, I could offer an add-on for, let's say, an additional series. Someone could add an additional series for $1.99 a month. So we would consider that a subscription plan add-on. Then I offer the silver plan, so that's one step up, where I offer streaming of any available TV shows through the service for $19.99 a month. So this is really, one step up. It costs more, but now they have unlimited access. This also provides limited access to an online portal with cooking tips and recipes. And then finally, I offer the gold plan, and this is a yearly plan. So it's one step up, it's providing more commitment, but it has a lot more features. So I offer streaming of any available TV series through the service, and I discount that price because they're signing up with me for a year, and so it's only $200 a year. This plan also offers sneak peeks to new shows before anyone else can see them, and offers full access to the cooking tips and recipe portal. All of these plans provide a 1-week trial, so subscribers can take a look at, try out these TV shows, but it's not so long that they could watch everything and then churn. And all 3 plans are promoted on major cooking websites and distributed through the online portal. The gold plan is also promoted through key celebrity chef websites. So that's my setup. And what I want to point out here is that, and in particular with the gold plan, that's the way that we encourage upsell. So the gold plan offers a few different things. It offers premium access, so things that other people can't view, unless you're on that plan. It offers more personalized offerings through going through that portal. And it also it offers an advantage through more channels. So we are actually promoting it through those key celebrity chef websites that gets more people. And so it really it'll lock people in for a year, but you're providing them with features that make them more satisfied and are more personalized to them. So I hope that example helped you out a little bit. On the right here of these slides, you're going to see our subscription trial conversion rate report that we have at Recurly. So I spoke about this a little bit earlier when we talked about trial conversion rate. So you're going to see on the top there, it's the trial conversion rate over time. And on the bottom, we break out the reasons why people aren't converting. So they were able to dig into them in a little bit more detail. So that just shows you an example visualization of something that you could use at Recurly or you could create on your own that will help you dig into that metric in a little bit more detail. So now that you have set up the pricing, promotional tools, the plans, and this example scenario, I now want to go through and essentially iterate, test, and measure again. So once I set up, for example, Emma's company's plans and pricing, I need to be flexible and ensure that I'm evaluating these metrics at the plan level, at the promotion level, and at the channel level. So I talked about the 3 different plans, the promotion I was running on the yearly plan, and the channels I was distributing through. So I'd want to take a look at, for each variation of those, my subscription revenue growth by plan, for example. As you'll see below, we have a plan-by-plan comparison as an example report that we provide at Recurly. Subscription churn, plan versus plan, and subscription LTV, plan versus plan. And then especially, since I'm providing a path for upgrade, I want to take a look at how many people are upgrading in particular, or downgrading if it's an indicator that they're unsatisfied with one of my plans. So this is really important in terms of understanding that path for upgrade, that path for increasing the lifetime value of your subscriber, so that you're able to maximize the value that you get from your subscribers and ensure that they're happy with your service. We just have a few more here. Yeah, so subscriber acquisition strategies. So I skipped over the piece about trials and promotions because I wanted to talk about it here. So yeah, more specifically on the acquisition side, here are some tools you can use to encourage new signups. The first I'll talk about is trials over there at the bullet point on the right. So free trial access can be very valuable when you're thinking about trying to acquire new customers, especially we see this a lot with digital services. But all sorts of different subscription businesses can use it. There's 2 main types of trials. There's a carded trial, which is really where users enter their credit card credentials at sign up. So if you've ever used a carded trial, you know you have to enter your credit card, and then it's basically just saying, hey, you've signed up for our service, but we're giving you the first week free. So that's mentally how I think about it. Is you've already signed up, but you get a week off, basically. And so subscribers have to cancel before the end of the trial if they don't want their card to be charged at the renewal period. Then there's cardless trials, which is a little bit more of anybody can sign up. You don't need to add your credit card information. And then if they decide they want to use your service, then they can add their payment information, and we will attempt to collect payment at renewal. So carded trials usually have a higher conversion rate because we already have the billing information on file for that customer, but cardless trials usually attract more new signups because there's less friction to sign up. They're both valuable. We see more people using carded trials, and the reason that we usually, cardless trials are really more for a specific business model, and those that use cardless trials really may have customers that need more time to explore the product. So they have a more complicated product. People really need to learn the value over time versus getting that value immediately provided at the get-go. Because you don't want to offer a cardless trial of 2 weeks, let's say, and during that time period, the customer is able to use and explore your entire product or service and then churn. That doesn't help you at all. So the next one is gifting. So you see gift plans and gift cards. So gifting is another great tool. It not only expands your subscriber base, but it also does 2 other things. It allows you to leverage your most valued customers, and it also reduces your subscriber acquisition costs. So it's similar to the trial subscription in that a giftee can get your your product for free of charge, but this time it's at no cost to you because the giftor purchases the gift card, and then so you still get the revenue for that service provided. But the giftee is able to try your service for free, and if they do end up converting to paid subscribers, gift cards and gift plans end up being a really low-cost acquisition method for you. So it's definitely something to consider. The other benefit is that in offering gift subscriptions, it can also provide you with some really dynamic data points on your most valuable and loyal subscribers. So the giftor, the person who purchases the gift card for someone else, is often already a customer, and when they are, then they're usually a big advocate for your brand, and you're able to dig into the attributes of those customers and understand what is it about them that makes them loyal, so then you can understand how you acquire more of those types of customers. So it provides you this data point that you wouldn't otherwise have if you didn't offer gift cards. And finally, coupons. So Coupons can be used for two different things. One, acquiring new subscribers, or as we talked about with reactivations, it can incentivize previous subscribers to reactivate. So that's another really smart way to use them. So our customers offer coupons at a fixed amount or for a percent of the entire purchase. And they usually utilize bulk unique coupons, and that means they can target specific segments of customers. So a few best practices here. You want to go into your campaign knowing who am I targeting and what am I trying to accomplish with this coupon campaign, because you are providing a discounted rate of your product or service. So you need to be really clear about your goals to ensure you get a payback on that. And then you're going to want to test out a few different configurations. First, you're going to want to look at, you're going to want to look at things like, maybe you try one version that limits the number of customers you can redeem, and then maybe you try another version of the coupon campaign where you limit the amount of time instead and you don't limit the amount of customers. So the key here is, really being flexible, trying different things, and ensuring you have the setup to measure the success of those campaigns. And then one thing to keep in mind through all of this is that the most effective promotions are hyper-targeted. So that really requires understanding your target subscriber. That's really important when you go into these, really understand who am I trying to target this promotion on and what are the attributes of those subscribers or potential subscribers. And then the last point I want to leave you with in this section is around frictionless experience. So this is really important in the subscription model because customer loyalty and lifetime subscriber value are crucial for subscription model success. We talked about that before. You need to minimize the points of friction that might cause your subscribers or potential subscribers to either not convert, to downgrade, or churn. So the most common points of friction and how you can deal with them, the first one, let's see here, I have about 4 of them real quick. And so the first one is sign-up payment friction. So we see this commonly, and there's a few ways to deal with it. So one of the things you don't want to happen is you don't want one of your customers to be interested in your product or service. They've convinced themselves mentally that they want to buy it. They see the value in it. But then they abandon their cart at purchase because it's too difficult to pay, or they tried to pay several times and it doesn't work. That's kind of the worst scenario for you. So to avoid this, you want to do a few things. First, offer flexible payment methods. So you want to give them options on ways they can pay. So for B2C companies, this could be offering PayPal and credit cards and debit cards. For B2B businesses, this could be ACH and credit cards, or even manual payments, so bringing in checks and then tracking those manual payments. And then second, you want to ensure your checkout flow is seamless. It needs to be easy to understand. It needs to be easy for them to pay so that they can go through the process and just get through it, and you can provide them the value quickly. So the perfect example of someone who does this well is Amazon. You think about it this way, you go in, you can even one click, you can pay with Amazon, they save your credit card on file, they make it very easy for you. So that's what I would think about in terms of really providing an easy checkout process for your customers. Secondly, trials again. So I come back to this, but they're a really good tool for reducing the barrier to entry. So in order to reduce that friction to sign up. So there's that friction to sign up in which they say, I'm not positive, I see some value, but I don't know if I want to pay X price. And a trial allows your users to realize and actually see and feel and use the value of your product at no cost to them. And then once they realize that value, they're much more likely to be willing to pay for it. The third one is decline management. This is a big one, and we talk about it a lot at Recurly. So decline management is really the process by which you prevent credit card failures from turning into subscriber churn. So that's the top of the list of things that our customers come to us with in terms of items they say they didn't anticipate being very complex, but ended up being pretty complex and and needed a lot of attention and complexity to solve for it. So we handle decline management through a few different methods. We do something called retry logic. So when a payment transaction fails, will actually automatically retry it on a specified schedule based upon that decline type. So if a transaction's declined because of insufficient funds, we want to retry that on a specific schedule so we're able to maximize and optimize when we can get that payment from the customer so they don't end up churning. And the other one is our account updater service. So this updates credit card information in our systems when it changes on the side of, let's say, Visa or MasterCard. And I think a lot of us have had this scenario as consumers. Your credit card changes, you forget how many services you may be using, even though you use them on a daily basis. You forget your password to the billing portal, and you have to manually go in and update credit card information. And it's a pain because you want to keep using the product or service, but you don't want to have to go in and update it yourself. So we actually work directly with Visa and MasterCard to update this information in our system so the customer doesn't have to do anything. So this really reduces a point of friction and the likelihood the customer will churn because they don't accidentally forget to update their information, the payment fails, and then they churn and don't realize it till later, and you've lost out on a month or weeks or even months and infinite revenue from that customer. So if you don't manage declines appropriately, here's an example of what can happen. Subscribers paying for your subscription, great, all good. Subscriber's bank declines the transaction when the subscription comes up for renewal for various reasons, insufficient funds, general decline. There's lots of different reasons it can happen. The subscriber is either unaware of the decline or they see it and forget about it. That's pretty common. And then the subscriber's invoice goes past due after a set period of time, and it goes into something we call dunning before that customer finally churns. So you not only, when this happens, you not only lose out on the revenue of that payment that specifically failed, you also lose out on any future revenue from that customer because they churned. And so it kind of hits you in both ways, and that ultimately brings down the subscriber lifetime value. And finally, in order to reduce friction in the customer experience, it's all about making the value of your product or service abundantly clear to your subscribers. So they really need to know and understand, make it easy for them to understand what they're getting from you. This means personalizing to their needs, whether that's in the product or service itself, the pricing or plans, or even billing needs. So again, offering flexibility really is key here. So I think that brings me to the end of these specific slides. I'll hand it back over to you, Wendy, if that's good.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, and this has been fantastic. We've got quite a few questions out in the queue already. I just want to remind our audience, we're taking those questions. We're going to have a live Q&A period at the about 10 minutes to the end of the period. So please feel free to ask your questions now. And Stuart, let's walk through these poll questions. Stuart, you want to go over these results with Emma?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much to everybody that's watching live that voted in that first poll. We asked you, does your company use a subscription model? Emma, 31% said no, but they're looking into subscriptions, which is great because all of that amazing content that you just gave there, I think is a real shot in the arm for 31% of our audience. 47% said yes, we have subscriptions and we use a third-party subscription billing platform, and 15% said yes, we have subscriptions and we build our own subscription billing platform. That's interesting to me. I just want to get your initial thought on that. Now, when I first did the State of Marketing Technology report, we sampled thousands upon thousands of marketers, really statistically significant data. And one of the things that was very interesting to me was, regardless of the size of the company, whether it was a small organization or a Fortune 500, more than 40% of people were building their own marketing technologies instead of buying. But here, we're seeing only 32% building their own. Do you think it's the general complexity of subscriptions that means it tracks that way a little bit?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. It's funny because when people think about billing and using subscriptions or billing on a recurring basis, there's a few things that come straight to their mind, and it usually is related around the packaging of that product. But oftentimes what people forget until they start getting into it is the billing is really complicated. So I talked about that decline management, and that's really important, and that's actually can be pretty complex to build out, and it ends up sucking a lot of manual resources in particular that prevents a lot of those businesses from really focusing on packaging and selling the product or service, really using their expertise and to focus on what they built their company for. And so we have a lot of people come to us and use a third party because they start looking into how they want to build their customers and realize, or start building it themselves and realize how many customers they're losing due to that decline management piece. And so, or even the communications they have to build out around billing. And so there's a lot of complexity that people don't realize until they start digging into the nuances. They call it like the backside of the office, the billing stuff. Really does kind of add up and takes a lot of resources if you don't have a system that can help you automate it.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, very good advice. We had 3% of people say that they weren't sure, and 1% said something else, and they'll give us more detail in the Q&A box. So just here's a reminder to our live audience, don't forget, go and put your questions into the Q&A box. We want to kick off a second poll, so let's do that right now, and then I'll ask you a couple more questions, Emma, before we get into the Unbounce case study, if that's okay. So we're going to kick off the second poll. We're going to ask you, audience, what is your greatest challenge with respect to subscription growth? Is it churn? Is it subscriber acquisition? Is it measuring performance? Is it data visibility? Or is it something else? And again, if it's something else, just pop down into the questions tab and let us know what that something else is. We're getting some early votes in there, and thank you so much, live audience, for being so responsive to our polls. You're doing an amazing job. Keep telling us what is your greatest challenge there. Emma, one of the things that occurs to me is that when you're running a subscription, when you're trying to build a subscription business, churn is the thing that keeps on coming back, and more and more and more. I mean, what are some of the best practices out there in reducing churn, and how much of that is down to aesthetics or transparency, or are there more important factors to consider when it comes to churn?
Yeah, so I would say look at it kind of in there's two different methods that we use, and they each have kind of two prongs to them. So the first one is separating out your voluntary versus involuntary churn, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that when we provide some benchmarks. But those are very different, and if you aggregate it into one single churn rate, you may be missing out on some things. So your voluntary churn rate's really a customer actively has canceled and basically is telling you they're unhappy with your product or service. And so that takes certain types of resources. And so when you look at it, your voluntary churn rate, you want to make sure that that's in line with industry standards, but you also want to develop some methodologies to fight that. And those methodologies are going to be very different from how you think about involuntary churn. So one best practice is just making sure you track those differently, and you're using different types of resources to fight those. So the involuntary churn, again, is related to that decline management side. So that's really related to non-payment. A lot of times the customers, they're usually passive in it. They don't even know. A lot of times they don't even know that they're about to churn from your product or service. And so that really takes a different type of strategy in order to prevent those customers from churning. And we talked about that automated piece when it comes to updating the credit card information, when it comes to retry logic. Those are the best ways you can fight that. And then on the voluntary side, it's really about qualitative information, paying attention to why your customers are churning. Are there points of friction? Is it that they don't see the value for the price point they're paying? Back to some of those things that we talked about. And then the second thing is to consider some of the internal and external factors. So you think about voluntary versus involuntary churn, and then you think about external versus internal factors. So external factors you need to be aware of are things like seasonal shifts, a new competitor in the marketplace. Subscriptions is, a pretty young industry, so it's really, you're going to have new people entering the space all the time, and so you really need to pay attention to that. And then internally, it's things like, is there product value and fit, and do you need to reevaluate your plans or your pricing? Or it even could be a company's had a change in leadership or a change in the business model, and that impacts churn. So you also want to pay attention to those external and internal factors that can that can play into churn to understand where it's coming from. So that's actually the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is really people are confused around why are customers churning and why can't I help it. And so I always go back to digging into the data and looking at those reasons, and then it's usually a much clearer path for how to solve for it, but there's never a one-size-fits-all because there's always multiple factors that can be contributing to it, so you really have to dig into them to understand.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's been voting in the second poll. 34% of you have said that churn is your greatest challenge. 43% have said subscriber acquisition. And of course, you know, that doesn't surprise me when we look at studies that we've done recently on marketers and marketing teams. By and large, everyone is throwing marketing budget at user acquisition at this point in time. You know, there's very little money being spent on things like advocacy or customer service and retention. You know, everyone's going for user acquisition all the time. So subscriber acquisition being greatest challenge is not a big surprise to me. Measuring performance is at 12%. Of course, you know, with the right platforms, you get all the analytics that you could possibly want, and the same goes for data visibility. The 3% of you that said something else, we're looking for you to go to that wonderful questions box and tell us what that something else might be. Hey, one thing that's occurred to me, Emma, we've got a case study that we want to go through from Unbounce. A nice segue into that is just thinking about what Unbounce do, which is, you know, conversion rate optimization and, you know, basically improving, incrementally improving the website experiences, the messaging, and everything else, which is something that people can do to reduce churn. I mean, after all, it's very expensive to double your traffic to a website. But it's incredibly cheap to basically double your conversion percentage, and doubling a conversion percentage halves your CAC, which of course helps with everything you've been talking about today as far as the subscription model is concerned. You know, how about we get into the Unbounce case study and take a look at what they've done?
Yeah, that sounds great to me. I think before we get there, I want to share just a few benchmarks with you guys, a few data points that our Recurly research. So Recurly research is really the arm of Recurly that takes a look across our 2,000 or more customers, aggregates data, and provides some industry benchmarks and indicators of where the subscription industry is going. And so I want to just speak to these two really quickly because I think that it's just important data points for you guys to see. So we talked about trials several times throughout this, and I want to speak to a few different benchmarks we found. So on the plan length side, on monthly plans, we saw a median trial length of 14 days. On quarterly plans, 32 days. And then on yearly plans, we saw a median trial length of 45 days. So the key takeaway here really is that there's at least a 2-week period of time that customers need to really experience your product and to understand its value, and that amount of time reduces even though the plan length increases. So you'll look at this first piece around the median trial length, and that's half of the entire billing cycle, but then you go to quarterly, and that is, again, 32 days, and we have that in the downloadable PowerPoint that will be corrected. And that, you know, is a third of your entire plan life cycle, and then the yearly plan is 45, and that's an eighth. So it's not that you always need to provide an extremely long trial for customers to see the value of your product. And then here on the conversion side, you're going to see we looked at across all of our customers that provide at least 150 trials or more, and looked at the trial conversion rates, both the median in the first quartile and the third quartile. So the first quartile represents the median of the lower half of the data set, and the third quartile represents the median of the upper half of the data set. And you'll look, and the overall median conversion rate is 83%. So that's really high, and that's good to see. But one thing you want to keep in mind here is that, first, the majority of our customers use carded trials. So like we said, that usually has a higher conversion rate than cardless trials. And then secondly, we're really only looking at the point of conversion. So you also want to take a look at what happens after that customer converts. So what happens post-trial? Did they convert, stay with you a month, and then they churned? And so that's another interesting thing to take a look at, and we'll look at next on our Recurly research side and put out some stats around that in the next few months is not only what is the conversion rate, but what's the retention rate on month 1, month 2, month 3, a year out. So there's just some interesting benchmarks for you guys to take a look at. And then the second one we have is around churn, because we just spent some time on churn. So I love taking a look at this one. Our Recurly research team has been diving into churn recently. And we'll be publishing some more detailed benchmark metrics in the next month. But we wanted to give you guys a little bit of a preview. So for this study, we actually looked across 1,200 sites. Sites are basically customers. Some clarifications again on the terminology. Voluntary churn is when the customer actively chooses to leave you, and involuntary churn is more passive. So just kind of take a view at this. A few key takeaways I think are interesting. OTT, education, and Box of the Month clubs have the highest median churn rate. OTT is most likely due to the seasonality or the fact that subscription video on demand services they're centered around some of these live events. So you end up having these really big, or live events, sports events, award shows. So you end up having these really big spikes in customer acquisition, but then you also have more churn after that happens. So it's important to keep in mind how you can reactivate those customers or maintain them even post live events. And then education experiences a similar effect. Really, they parallel with the academic calendar of schools and universities. So you see high churn in the summers, but then you see high acquisition numbers, high sign-up numbers in the fall months. So it's interesting to see those trends as well. And then on the low median side, we see the lowest churn rates for publishing and entertainment and for SaaS. So just interesting to pay attention to those as well. And when we talk about churn rate, we're really looking at the total number of subscriptions that churned over a month divided by the number of subscriptions that started at the beginning of the month. And we looked across 12 months for the last 12 months and took the median of all of those months, just so you guys know how that methodology works. So I hope these are useful to you. Like I said, we'll be coming out with more through Recurly research. We're really excited about this stuff. I hope that it gives a good indication to people who are interested in subscriptions about where the industry is going in general. And then, yeah, let's just dive into the case study. So Unbounce we chose Unbounce as a case study. They're a really great customer of ours. We think they're doing some really interesting things with their subscription models, and we love that they are flexible and trying different things and have seen success with that. So for those who don't know, Unbounce provides a platform that enables marketers to launch, to create, launch, and test conversion pages, all of that without development resources. And so they're growing pretty fast. They're 120 on Deloitte's technology list of fast-growing companies in North America, and they were number 14 in Canada. They're based out of Vancouver. And yeah, so that's just a little background. They rely on subscription insights a lot. So they closely monitor things like MRR, AR, which is AR is annual recurring revenue. It's just another way of looking at your recurring revenue. They look at their paying subscriber growth, their average gross margin, which is really the percentage of revenue left after the cost of servicing that revenue. And then they also take a look at their trial conversion rates. Those are just some of the key KPIs that they monitor. And so we also chose to take a look at them because they're interesting. They just changed their pricing structure in 2017. So they're a great example of a company that used data points and customer feedback to understand where they provide the most value and then how they can package that in a way that's appealing to their current customers and to their prospects. So their mantra in that pricing change was for customers to clearly understand what they're getting from Unbounce in comparison to their cost. They wanted to reduce the amount of small charges that they had previously, and they also wanted to create a path forward for growth via multiple plan options. So they used Recurly to do a few different things to meet those goals. First, they started packaging. They have all these extra features, so these add-ons that they would add during the billing cycle, and it was just confusing to customers. They weren't really understanding, what am I getting charged for? Why am I getting charged this small amount here and there on top of my base price every month? And so they packaged all of those extra, quote-unquote extra features into add-ons. And so they now have plan add-ons that are almost like mini bundles on top of their main subscription rates. They also created add-ons use these add-ons to create multiple ways for customers to grow without having to switch plans. So if someone wanted to upgrade plans, they could, but if they just needed some extra features and they were happy with their plan, they could include an add-on to that subscription-based price and continue to use Unbounce. So they personalize this experience a little bit more. And then they now offer 3 different plans on both a monthly billing and a yearly billing. So this is important. That goes back to that plans versus the billing schedule. So your plan is what you're offering over a time period. Your billing schedule is how often you're billing that customer for it. On the acquisition strategy side, they really encourage folks to choose the yearly plan because that ties them in for a longer period of time, encourages growth, encourages customer loyalty. If they're able to work with them and not worry about them churning, they're going to stay with them for at least a year. And they encourage customers to upgrade to that by using Recurly to provide a discounted price. So if you move up to the yearly plan, the yearly version of one of the plans, you're actually discounted by 20%. So that's a good acquisition method on their side to try to encourage people to upgrade. And then to reduce friction, to sign up with them, they actually offer a trial period of 30 days using Recurly's subscription trial features. So on any of the plans, regardless of which one you want to try, you can do a free trial for 30 days. And then on top of that, to reduce friction even more, they actually offer a demo account feature. So it's similar to a cardless free trial, where potential customers can just sign up and check out the really basic features of Unbounce without having to enter their credit card information. So that allows people to kind of explore a little bit what the platform's like, what's the value proposition here, what am I going to get, but they're not fully using Unbounce. If they want to fully use them, then they would try a free trial and sign up to continue to pay with them. So really key takeaways from their pricing changes and their subscription model is they offer flexibility in their plans. They offer 3 different plans at 2 different billing cycles. They focus on making their value clear to customers with their pricing. So part of the reason they changed their pricing is they got feedback from customers that said they're not understanding the value they're getting for what they're paying, so they may be unhappy. And so they changed that. They listened to the customer feedback, and they closely tracked the customer feedback and the data-driven insights to monitor the success of these pricing changes. So this really comes back to the iterate, monitor, and be flexible always. So yeah, that's just a really good example. They're a joy to work with.
Thanks, Emma. Thank you so much. Hey, guys, we have just a few minutes left, and I'd love to get to some of these questions from the audience. Oop, slides are going nuts a little there. There we go. One question that came in from the audience, and Emma, I'm just going to go right to you. Does decline management include updates of credit cards with new card numbers due to fraud, et cetera, in addition to card expiration updates? What do you think?
Yeah, so it's not only expiration date updates, it is also related to if someone's card is fraudulent and the credit card company changes their number and they shut off the old card, that's absolutely part of it. I had just used the changing or the expiration date updates as one example. So it's any reason why someone would change their card. Now, if we find fraud, because we do have fraud management as part of our offering as well, we will shut that down. That's a little bit different. But to answer your question more directly, yes, that's part of it.
Well said. Thank you, Emma, and thank you, audience member, for that question. Guys, I am so sorry. I wish we had more time for more questions. Unfortunately, we are at the top of the hour. So I want to have a huge thank you to Recurly for allowing us to bring you, our audience, such compelling thought leadership like today's event. Judging by the folks who are already in the audience, this has hit a definite sweet spot for you, and we'll continue to bring you more information, continue to help bring top execs like Emma Clark to you from companies like Recurly in the future on this topic. Now, if you've enjoyed today's event or have suggestions as to how we can make it better, we'd actually love it if you gave us a rating. We take those ratings very seriously, and we love hearing for ways we can deliver even better content to help serve your interests and your needs. If you haven't already, check out the attachments area. There's a bunch of goodies in there, including an interview with Emma, as well as some nice Easter eggs in there for you as well. This webcast is available to watch on demand, so if you missed it, if you joined late, you can come back in about a half an hour after we're done recording. It'll all be there. I'm Wendy Schuchert. I'm signing off for VentureBeat on behalf of our panelists Emma Clark, Senior Product Manager from Recurly, and Stuart Rogers, Director of Marketing Technology here at VentureBeat. This has been a webcast copyright 2017 by VentureBeat. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted, if that is the case, by VentureBeat and Recurly, who are solely responsible for its content, and the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinion. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for our great panelists, and we hope to see you again soon. Signing off for VentureBeat, I'm Wendy Schuchert. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.